The skill programming language provides three binary mechanisms to control the flow of your programs: the if function, the when function, and the unless function. The if function evaluates an expression and runs a block of code if the expression is non-nil. It does not run the block of code if the expression evaluates to nil. Let's look at an example. In our small example, we roll to die, each with a possible outcome of an integer between 1 and 6 inclusive. The random function accepts an integer as an argument, and returns a random integer from 0 to 1 less than the integer supplied. So we use an argument of 6, which will return an integer of 0 to 5, and we add 1 to make the result 1 to 6. We use the if function to see if the total of the die is 7, and if it is, we'll print a message. If is a function just like all other skill functions, so you cannot have a space after the if, and before the open parentheses. We then have an expression that is evaluated, and if the result is non-nil, then our block of code is run. In this case, if we roll a 7, then a message is displayed. Let's load and run our function and make sure it works. Notice that the message is only printed if we roll a 7. In our example, the then keyword is optional, and if we do not supply it, then the program will still function the same. However, it is good practice to always include the then keyword. If our block is more than one expression, then you may not get the results that you expect. Let's add another print statement to our block to show what I mean. When we save and load our program, we notice that both print statements are printed when we roll a 7, as we would expect. However, if we remove the then keyword, and load and run our function, we see that when a non-7 is rolled, the second statement is run, and if a 7 is rolled, then the first print statement is run, but not the second. When the then statement is not included, the first expression is evaluated, and if it is true, then the second statement is evaluated and run. If the first expression is not true, then the third statement is evaluated and run. If more expressions are included, then a syntax error is thrown. The best way to avoid confusion is to always include the then keyword. The if function also has an optional else block that can be run when the expression evaluates to nil, a false value. To include an else block, we simply use the else keyword, and include an expression or block of expressions after the else keyword. If statements can be nested within either the then block or the else block as many times as necessary. When your if function only has a then block, no else block, we can also use a when function instead. A when function evaluates an expression and only runs its one block of code if the expression is non-nil. Some people find this more intuitive and easier to read. An else block is not allowed with a when statement. Let's change our example just a little. If the roll is not a 7, our else block runs, and if our roll is also not 2, 3 or 12, then the point is established, so we'd like to save the point in a variable. This evaluates to true when the roll is not 2, not 3, or not 12. To make our code easier to read, we can use an unless function instead of a when function. An unless function only runs its block of code when the expression evaluates to nil, which allows us to remove our negation. So now our block of code is run unless the roll on the die is 2, 3, or 12. Like the when function, the unless function does not accommodate a second block of code to run in the event that the first expression evaluates to a non-nil value. In summary, the skill programming language provides three binary mechanisms to control the flow of your programs: the if function, the when function, and the unless function.